Call this meeting to order. Sarah, read the roll, please. Here.
Thompson,
Here.
Howard,
Here.
Ferris, Garcia.
Here. Please join me for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We're going to move on to item number C. I was wondering, Rochelle. Item number C, approval of agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as itemized.
So moved.
I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Brombaugh. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Ferris. Any questions or concerns? Sarah, read the roll.
Ferris,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Brumbaugh,
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes, thank you. Move on to item number 2, public comment. Has anybody signed in, sir? Nobody? Okay, thank you, thank you. So we move on to item number 3, presentations and proclamations. I have invited the County Appraiser, Rochelle Stanley, to come and kind of enlighten us all. There's some legislation that is going on at the state level. Maybe some of you have heard about it that can have some measures of effects for the counties and municipalities, and so it is Senate Bill 13, and including in there is an amendment. So Rochelle, you might take the microphone, introduce yourself, and just state a little bit about and enlighten us of what's going on at the state.
Evening, Rochelle Stanley. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Sherburne County Appraiser, also Rollins and Graham County Appraiser. I'm also the president of the Northwest Appraisers Association, so I'm on our executive board throughout the state. So whenever legislation that affects counties come about, I usually get a hold of those. I printed off the Senate bill as amended by the committee, but I don't think this latest amendment is in there entirely the way this is worded. So the Senate had a hearing at the Assessment and Taxation Committee, I think a couple of weeks ago. The Senate quickly passed this. The House had a hearing last week, and they're voting on this bill tomorrow. Friday, this new amendment came out. So this bill is in 3 parts. It's kind of 3 different things it's talking about. Jay Hall, who's the attorney for KAC, which is the County Association of Counties, sends out a weekly newsletter, and he kind of summed it up best, so I'm just going to quote him in his newsletter. So it says, this bill puts in place the notice and hearing language from last year, requiring an additional notice to go out to property taxpayers prior to finalizing the county budget. And so this county, but it goes to anybody's budgets. If the county were to budget a higher amount in property taxes, regardless of the reason for this higher collection, counties would also be responsible for sending out notices for other units of government. Although the bill allows for reimbursement of certain expenses, the bill would also allow county treasurers to accept partial payments for non-delinquent taxes, and would prevent county appraisers from increasing the value of a home solely as a result of normal maintenance. It would also repeal the tax lid. So the our treasurer here already accepts partial payments, so that's not a big deal. We already don't appraise values based on solely on maintenance, so that's kind of a non-issue. The tax lid going away, I guess is not that the issue. The issue is this bill makes it retroactive to January 1, 2021. The timing of how all of these public hearings have to go out, I guess, doesn't really work for the county clerks from the time that we have to certify our values and they have to certify budgets to the state and all that kind of stuff, which I don't know how all that works. But I know it says, like, if you, it basically takes away the mill levy as the issue. It's now all about the budgets. So if you as a city want to raise your budget even $1, then you have to send out a letter to every taxpayer notifying them of a public hearing and explain why. That's not a real big issue, except we already have public hearings for all of our budgets. I mean, everybody that gets $1 from their, from taxes, that's listed on your tax statement, schools, county, city, townships, library, extension districts, and whoever all gets any money, they already have to have a public hearing for what they do. But the expense of sending out those notices is huge. I mean, when we send out just the real estate notices every year on our 6,400 parcels, I think we spend anywhere between $3,000 and $4,000 because of postage, envelopes, office supplies. That's not including our, the employee time that we put into it. So somebody at the taxation, at the House hearing said that it was $1.2 million it would cost the taxpayers to send out these notices. So the bill doesn't take into consideration any increases for mental health, health department, sheriff's department, law enforcement. If you need a new bridge, or, you have some kind of expense that insurances, a lot of things that are out of our control, even when we try to cut costs. Postage is supposed to go up next year, things like that we can't control. And the problem with this bill is they think it's going to freeze property taxes, which there are ways that, they could work to find reducing property tax, but this isn't the way to go about it. This is not going to freeze anybody's taxes. It's going to, so our 2021 values aren't out yet, and they will be mailed March 1 of this year. Some preliminary numbers look like we're going to lose about $10 million in ag value, which won't affect the city a lot, but it definitely affects the county's portion of mill levy. Residential properties, we're going to see a pretty good size increase this year because our market is just exploding. So residential values are what would you pay for it. We want to be within 10% of that number. So when you look at the value times the assessment rate times the mill levy, this bill is going to do very little to stop the tax increases, I guess. The big issue that I see that, being an issue is exemptions. I mean, every year there's something that gets exempted. Even in this hearing about this bill, someone that used to be a representative, Lynn Jenkins, said that it's not fair that some health clubs are exempt and some aren't. So they wanted to actually put an amendment in here to exempt all health clubs. Okay, well, what is a health club exactly? I mean, they need to define it better than that. And when you're exempting properties constantly, all you do is you're not cutting taxes, you're shifting them. So all of these exemptions that we've got in the last 20 years, all they've done is shifted the burden to the ag, the small, the commercial business and the homeowners. It didn't eliminate them, it didn't stop those taxes, it just shifted who pays for them. So, and we do have a video on our website. I don't know if you new ones knew about it. It's on the Sherman County website. It talks about kind of how property taxes work. Riley County has 3 videos on there that are really good videos. One talks about the 3-legged stool of taxes, sales, income tax, and property tax, and the balancing act of that. And one, I think, talks about maybe data collection in the appraiser's office. But those are really good videos, and they're really easy to understand for people that don't deal with this. We kind of have our own language, I always say. But on the exemptions, the example I gave, I emailed our representative, Adam Smith, and the 2 representatives for Graham, and just said, this is as simple as I can put it. You have 100 properties that would all pay equal taxes, and the taxes that need to be collected is $100. So they each owe $1 in taxes. Well, you exempted 50 properties, so now you have 50 properties left to pay $100, or $2 each. You doubled the 50 people that have to pay taxes. You just doubled their tax rate in order to give these people a break. And that's exactly what happens constantly when they're doing these exemptions. So, I mean, it's great when you, and the excuse I always get when I talk about it is, well, no one wants to tell the Girl Scouts they have to pay taxes. And I'm not saying what groups or whatever, but there are a lot of exemptions that, are unnecessary that could be changed. Also see, there's a lot of bills coming up that are, you might think, oh, that doesn't affect us because it says it for the county, or, you know, may not look like that. There's a lot of bills coming up that are really, really bad for our county. I mean, they will, you know, as a whole, a small county, we're constantly fighting against eastern Kansas. You know, most of them don't think we should have schools or have a county seat in every county. They think we should be consolidated to 4 counties or something. And, you know, it's just a never-ending battle between western Kansas and eastern Kansas, unfortunately, and we have 1 representative and they might have 30. So, I would strongly suggest that, you know, we have, our senator lives right here in Goodland. Adam Smith is from Wallace County. Both of them were, I think Rick was on the city commission, Adam was a county commissioner. They both really grasp government. A lot of representatives, you know, they don't get it. Those 2 do. I email them a lot. I know they get irritated, but when it comes from the county appraiser, it doesn't mean much. But when it comes from you guys, you know, you have more weight with those kind of people. Contact them, let them know what your issues are. They are voting on this bill tomorrow, so I would please ask that you would contact them tonight, email Adam Smith, and let him know where you stand. He's also the chairperson for the taxation committee this year. So it's my understanding that, and I don't know exactly how, 100% how that works at Topeka, but it's my understanding that he can say that this amendment will not, get accepted. That he has the power to not accept it. This new amendment, what it says is that, so right now we mail out our value notices March 1. It would say we have to have all of our values to the county commissioners by February 5th, and anything that increased in value more than 10% on the commercial, ag, or residential values, that the county commissioners can change those values. Well, I have no authority on ag values. I get those from the state. This is, it's unconstitutional and frankly scary. I've talked to several county commissioners that said we don't want to be setting values. First of all, they're not qualified. You know, they don't have the education. What's going to stop them from just changing their own values and nobody else's? I mean, there's just a lot of things that could happen that just you know, don't make sense to me. And it would also have to speed my process up a whole month to get my values out. So I already don't get ag values until December 1, and trying to get to meet this new deadline would be almost impossible for me. But hopefully they don't add this amendment to this bill.
So at that point, the county commissioners can have the right to increase regardless of what?
No, they'd have well, it says they have the right to look at any values that I increased more than 10%, which ag values, no, we are seeing a decrease in ag values this year. Be the first time in probably, I don't know, 6 years maybe. But on average, the last 3 or 4 years, they've went up 30 to 40%, which on grass, when you're at $50 an acre, you know, going up a couple of dollars is when you're just looking at percentages, can be kind of high. But it says, you know, that they can actually, so I have to give them to them by February 5th, and then on or before February 15th, they shall review the values on the report, and based on what the majority of the commissioners want to do, they'll make recommendations if they want to keep the values the same or decrease any percentage down to the previous valuation year. So, I mean, if they want to go to school and get qualified, you know, more power to them. And if they get the hearings, and if part of my compliance is what's called a ratio study. That's a big portion of if we're meet the state's compliance or not. They look at residential and commercial properties, the ones that are sold at fair market value, which means it's a willing buyer, willing seller. I put my house on the market with a realtor, and I had people, you know, making me offers so that it's open market to anybody. They look at what that house sold for they take the appraised value divided by the sale price and get a ratio study. And if the majority of our sales are not within 90 to 110%, we're out of compliance. And then we have issues, then we have issues with the state trying to get back in. So a lot of people think, oh, you guys tell me how much money we need and I raise values, and that's not how it works at all. And honestly, I'm shocked how our residential market is last year. So, we had multiple houses that have sold, with multiple bidders. Numerous houses that I call on, they've sold them within hours. Oh, I listed it for 6 hours. I had it on the market for 10 hours. And I had multiple people wanting it. So, I mean, it's just, we don't hear about that in Sherman County. A lot of out-of-town, out-of-state buyers coming in, and interest rates are low still, so I'm sure that's attractive to people. And I don't know all the reasons why people are paying so much, but when you have a piece of property, you want to know it's worth more than you bought it for. So, I mean, it's good if you're someone that's wanting to sell, knowing your investment is worth what it is. If you're someone that's never going to sell, it doesn't seem fair, but unfortunately that is the law right now. And it's ever changing, as you can see. So
Betsy, do you believe that, my understanding that there's 30 members on this particular committee that will be voting on Eastern Kansas, but do you think that Adam has the legitimate right to stop the vote on the amendment and the tax bill 13, right?
I think that he has, so from what I've heard, which I don't know 100% and I'm not a lawyer, but I think that the taxation committee, if they don't introduce this amendment, then when they go to vote on this bill, it will not be part of it.
Thanks.
So that's another thing that kind of irritates me is I try to listen to taxation hearings. They're online. Anybody can listen to them. Same with the Senate. So when they had this hearing last week, there was a lot of people, even the senator of that's the chair for the Assessment Taxation Committee, talked quite a bit how they feel like city and county governments, there's not transparency, and this is to try to get transparency, and that you don't get, they feel like you guys just have this unlimited checkbook and you're not being responsible with taxpayer dollars and all of this stuff. And transparency was said probably 20, 30 times. And then they go and they file this amendment after that public hearing. Well, where is the transparency in that? I wouldn't know about it if I didn't have county commissioners and people in our association that are up at Topeka paying attention to what's going on. Because this did not show up on, when I go to their website and look at when I pull this, this bill, it didn't show up at the time of the hearing. So I feel like they're saying one thing and doing another. And I feel like, I tell people this all the time. My office is an open door. There's some stuff that's confidential, but most stuff, almost everything is public. My employees get upset with me in all my counties sometimes. I nickel and dime everything. I try to buy local. If something's not local, you find what's cheapest, because, I always look at it as if I'm going to pay for it with my own money. I think city and county governments do that. I think the state forgets to do that sometimes. So I just think it's funny that they say we're not transparent when they do stuff like this.
So I have a question on the general maintenance. We've
Sure.
had you here before, so clear this up for me if I'm wrong, but it might even go along with our later agenda item on the rehabilitation program. But when we've asked you this before, if someone paints their house, does a roof, all that, you said, well, the answer you gave previously, if I remember right, was when you drive by or when you do your stop, if the house generally looks nicer and is better upkeep, the valuation is going to go up. And so I would call painting and all those stuff, or even replacing windows if they need to be replaced, or shingles or whatever, general maintenance. So, but what you said tonight is,
So
you said
based
that
solely
is
on
different.
that the value cannot increase solely based on maintenance. If somebody paints their house, So if you're someone that generally maintains your house and you repaint your house, that is not what made your value go up. It's probably what everybody else is paying for houses. If you're someone that when your roof gets hail damaged and you replace it right away, that does not affect your value. If you're someone that has a big hole in your roof and you know you have water coming through your house and then you replace it, that will affect your value because you've in essence changed the physical condition of your property. I always say, like, if you drive by and that house, you know, has a big hole in it, are you gonna pay the same amount for that house as the one with the roof that is fixed, you know, dry? So, no, we don't, maintenance, I mean, people, you know, it might appear that we raise values because of maintenance, but we don't.
Because that what kind of was frustrating last time because we're trying to incentivize people to do stuff like that, but then they're gonna get hammered because it may look a little nicer because the valuations are coming higher, but that's
Yeah.
not what's being said.
But, so revitalization is separate from maintenance. So if you're doing a remodel of your house, if you're putting on, you know, and it kind of depends on the house too. If the house is 100 years old and you're putting in new windows, might be different than if it's a house that was a 1990 house with new windows. So it kind of depends on the physical condition of and the age of the property. But if you go in and you're putting in a new kitchen and new bathrooms and all new floor covering, that is not maintenance, that's remodel.
Yeah,
and,
that's true.
Yeah.
If I remember the context of last, just painting, if it looked nicer, was gonna raise the
Yeah.
valuations. That's not gonna help us to try to.
No,
um,
no, and if
allow
that
people to-
happens, it's totally a coincidence, and honestly, I probably don't know every house well enough to know if it had a new paint job.
Yeah. Well, I just wanna
Um,
make sure that we're not,
so-
that's not gonna
Yeah,
be a strike against somebody, you know,
No.
as we look at different things and trying to incentivize
no,
people.
and a lot of times people do absolutely nothing to their house and it's gonna go up in
Yeah,
value
I
based on what
understand that.
others have sold,
Yeah, I
so,
understand.
yeah. But it does, I had somebody that painted their house one summer, which they painted the exactly same color, so I didn't even notice that they painted it. And they're still convinced to this day that I raised their value because of that, and when I went and looked at it when they were there, and I said, oh, I didn't notice that you painted it. Because we don't physically step on every property every year. We only go on 1/6 of the properties, 17%. Unless there's unless there's a building permit, if somebody asks us to go out, if they tore something down, if they've done something to the property, we'll go to those, but otherwise it's a simple drive-by. We're not physically on the property, every single year. So,
Yeah, that was good. Well, I wrote to several legislative bodies there, and I contacted them and expressed my concerns. I would encourage the city commissioners to do the same. One of my focal point was the fact that I didn't believe that the current statute that we have right now that was voted in 2015 needed any kind of amendments. That, the right belonged to the people. If you needed more money, you took it to the people, they voted, and they said yes, then yes. That there's nothing to be fixed on a broken system. And I also alluded to the fact that, they were perpetuating more monetary expense to us by virtue of the fact that the system is not broken the way that it is right now. And unfortunately, sometimes Easterners doesn't understand the western side of the state, and that we're act-based and we're act-related, and that's how we make our livings out here. But the fact still remains that by modifying through these amendments, and one of the things that I said, the appraisal discretionary decisions should be based upon the county appraiser, because that's why they're hired to do so, instead of putting it in anybody else's court. So I would encourage the city commissioners, to write to the senator and to Adam and express your concern, as Rochelle said, if he's got some measures of control on that thing, he is from western side. And I did tell Adam, I said, what it's like out here. Anyway,
yeah,
so
and if you know any other, like we have one representative for a large area, so if you know other representatives, I email them all the time. It's like I have relatives in other cities that I don't represent, but I'm like, oh, have family there, they're voters and taxpayers, they have concerns, they don't know to look at this stuff, but, so I contact others that don't necessarily in our area. And sometimes ones that are, more eastern Kansas, we have a good discussion because they don't think about some of the issues. Another big amendment or House bill they're looking at is changing the way ag values are done, which would make the fluctuation on the values every year extreme from one year to the other. Well, how do you do a lease if you want to cash rent out your land? If you're, year to year, your taxes are going to go skyrocket one year and down the next. And they don't look at ag land the way we do. And they look at it as a commercial property, so they want it to be at market value. Well, if you know anybody in Nebraska that has ag land, they can tell you what market value has done to their ag land. I don't know how anybody can afford it up there. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Any
I'm
questions
Jamie.
for Rochelle? All right.
And if you ever have any questions, if you have a bill you wonder about or something, I don't have all the answers, but I know the right people to ask. And you can email me or call my office anytime and see what we can do.
Thanks,
Thank
Rochelle.
you.
Thanks for coming in. Move on to item number 4, consent agenda. Item A, January 1921 Commission meeting minutes. Item B, appropriation ordinances 2021-03, 2021-03A, 2021-P03, and item C, 2020 utility charge-offs. I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Before we do that, there was a mistake in the meeting minutes from last meeting. Under the formal actions and under the election of mayor, on the first one, motion by Commissioner Howard to nominate Vice Mayor Thompson and seconded by Vice Mayor Thompson. That was actually seconded by Commissioner Ferris, not me, so that would need to be.
Corrections. You want to make those corrections? Any other concerns from the commission? I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll move with the corrections.
Okay.
On the
Have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Thompson. Have a second by Commissioner Ferris. Any questions or concerns? I have one under the charge off on page 2. I was just wondering how we bill on a monthly basis. There was a charge off there by Asameda Merchant, which I think was the old Motel 6, in the amount of $10,631. You might find out, because we generally bill those on a monthly basis, right? And if you don't pay your bill within 10 days, then we cut off. That seems like quite a sizable amount there. Just a concern that you might check on that, Sarah, or ask Mary about it or something.
You're just concerned as to how the amount got so
Got so
large.
big, yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, we have a motion on the floor in a second. No other concerns? Sarah, read the roll.
Howard,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Ferris,
Yes.
Brumbaugh,
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes. Okay, we move on to item number 5, formal action. Item A, termination of lease of King Air Cafe. Alan?
Is it Valdez? Mr. Valdez and I talked a couple of times about having his nephew take over the lease at King Air at the airport, and eventually decided that he would like to be removed from the lease altogether and redo a new lease with his nephew. And so based upon that, we have to take 2 actions. One is the voluntary termination of the existing lease with Mr. Valdez, so that removes him from the equation. And then if you choose to approve a new lease, with, Mr. Montalongo and Kerry Rico for the same space, basically at the same terms. This morning I was asked, my Commissioner Thompson about the utilities on that space, and you might have you probably don't have a better idea, because we calculate those, but with two people gone today, we did the best we could, and we think the utilities, in that space are somewhere between $6,900 and $7,500 a year, give or take some on that. So that's included as part of the equation here.
Any other concerns there? Well, I think, Don and Robin have done a good job out there through the extended time that they volunteered to step up to help us in that particular, restaurant out there, and, they are seeking termination of lease, right? And at that time, so I will entertain a motion to accept the termination of King Eric and Flay with Don and Robin Valdez.
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Brombaugh. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Have a second by Commissioner Howard. Any questions or concerns? Sarah, rethrow.
Thompson,
Yes.
Brumbaugh,
Yes.
Ferris, Howard,
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Move on to item B, new lease, King Eric Cafe. Ellen?
And so with the termination of that lease, but which, by the way, in the document, it ends on February 28th officially. So, because we knew we weren't going to get to it till tonight. So in the same spirit of that now, to allow the new occupants, we simply have to enact a new lease, which was the same as the old lease, and would take place officially on February 28th.
Any questions?
Yeah. I have a question. I was just looking at the lease. I don't know. This is my first dealing with the restaurant lease out at the airport. I don't know what has been wanted by the city out of the lease. I'm just curious as to why. Is there a for-profit business that's run out there? Correct. You guys maintain a for-profit business, but we give them the rent, but then we pay their utilities for them, which ultimately, not quite by what he was figuring, but almost balances out so that the city's basically getting nothing for them having use of the building while they're running a complete for-profit business out of the building. I'm just curious as to why things have been done that way.
You like my input?
Yes, please.
I think from the standpoint of the airport, it's important to judge the value of the restaurant against the traffic at the airport. I think we get funds from other businesses that operate out of the airport as well. And in this case, I think the restaurant, I wouldn't tend to speak for either of you how much money you make out at the restaurant, but given the traffic flow out there, it almost seems to me that on behalf of the city, this is an amenity rather than a money-making venture for us. We have numerous ventures that really don't provide us with the funds that it takes to operate them. And in this case, it's the same principle, but it's on a smaller scale. The restaurant is really an opportunity for us to attract air traffic, notoriety to our airport, because we have an amenity that other smaller airports don't have. And in the name of economic development and, you know, the benefit of the city in total, this is one of those things that you do to help with that. We do it on other scales, whether people do it to attract big box retailers and all sorts of things. And this is no different as an economic incentive for our community. That's my take on it.
historically, that has been the case, for economic development purposes when Mrs. McClure sold to us. But even prior to then, Alan is right. It's something that we procreatively use to generate more publicity to our airport. And one of the things that that does help us is that you have a number of airplanes that land there, and we sell fuel to. That we get monetary means back from. You have and even with the new extension of the taxiway going on with extending it out, we're going to see a lot more retail. We've never viewed it as a monetary gain. It's kind of like the swimming pool, a service that we provide. I would tend to think that you would shortchange the functionalities of the airport if we were not to offer those amenities out there, because there would probably be quite a few airplanes that wouldn't stop there that currently do so. I think most of them stop by because they need a temporary break, and they go in there, and they eat. And I've known of stories of people that just stop there just because of the reason that the restaurant is there. So it's just an amenity that we've offered there, for years. And we probably don't break from the food industry standpoint, but it's something that draws even a lot of people from our own community out there. So that's the reason why the commission in previous decisions have always supported that venture.
Yeah, I understand that. I've gone out there and eaten many times. It's always good food, and I enjoy it out there. I just, from a budgetary and financial standpoint of the city, it's just curious as to why it's done in this way. Whereas if the city was more interested in having it as an amenity, doesn't the city just run it like on a commission base with another business or something out there instead of a full lease for a for-profit business at basically at cost for the business?
Yeah, it's easier for us to give utilities as part of the lease and so forth, because we don't have to spend any cash. We're already providing those services, so we don't collect, but we don't spend the cash.
Any other input or concerns? Okay, I will entertain a motion under formal action item B for the new lease of the King Air Cafe between the City of Goodland and Miguel Montalongo and Carrie Rico, which is the exact same contract that we have with Mr. and Mrs. Valdez.
I'll make a motion to do the contract.
I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Ferris. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Commissioner Topinson. Any questions or concerns? Sarah Rethrow.
Howard,
Yes.
Ferris,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Brumbaugh,
Yes.
Garcia.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Malongo, for taking the endeavor.
Yep, thank you,
Okay.
guys.
All right.
Good luck. We hope you make a good living, man.
All right, we move on to item number 6, discussion item. Item A, review board of applicants. Ellen?
Reappointment of Jan to the cemetery board, which she already serves on, expires in February.
That's for renewal for 3 years, right?
Yes.
Mhm. Any questions?
As always, appreciate anybody who stepped
That's
up to
right.
serve on these boards.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, we move on to item B, home rehabilitation program. Alan?
I didn't even hear you vote on that.
There's no vote, it was a discussion.
Home rehabilitation program. This Commissioner Thompson asked me to dust this off early in my tenure, and so I put this in the packet for your information to discuss and to give me direction about how you want to proceed. As you can see, I've included minutes where it was previously discussed. the whole program has been written up in detail. So it's pretty well finished. It's just direction for me how you want to proceed.
Yeah, so basically I wanted to bring this back up because it's something we had discussed and we were going full force on beginning of last year, and then it just kind of got tabled and we never brought it back up. You know, we budgeted the funds for it in the budget for the year, but we never actually finished the program. So I just want to make sure that we get it finished so it can be utilized. As far as the copy that I have, and I assume it's probably the copy that you have, under the program guidelines, under E, we had decided it appeared to be 2 years instead of 3 years. That was in our last discussion. I still would prefer 0 years, but I gave up a little on that, so we just agreed on 2 years. I don't know how much we actually went through this. I was just down section 5 under C, city staff will review applications and make recommendations to the city commission, and D, the city commission will have final decision over all applications for the funding. I mean, that's fine. I don't know why once we get the program in place, if there was the city staff can review and make the decision that, the applicant is within the guidelines, why we would have to have a secondary approval above them for them to go ahead with the program. But
I don't have no problem with that either, taking that out of there.
and then also under G of that, the very low income applicants will be given preference when multiple qualifying applications exist. Although I like the spirit of that. I'm not a big fan of giving somebody something ahead of somebody else, just because they have different circumstances if they're both applying for the same program. I don't know that I would want to give preferatory to somebody else ahead of somebody else who had applied before them. But that's my thoughts on what we have here.
Any comments?
Be in agreement with both of those. I mean, I don't want to be up here making decisions, and if you meet the criteria, meet the criteria. And I think it should be handled, such, and so it takes any bias out of it. And as far as that's kind of redundant. Then if there's like an extra layer there with the very low income, I mean, if you meet it, you meet it, and first come, first serve until the funds are gone, I think would be my thoughts.
Yes, agreed.
I don't have any concerns. The only thing that I would educate the commission on is that the redundancy of item C or D is irrelevant in this situation, because under the governing jurisdiction of the city commission has the final say-so on everything, irregardless. So it's irrelevant. So to me, I would just leave it there, because you still, at the end of the day, I mean, not that we have to involve, the city staff can make the decision. Just as a council, you bring it through, because that's irrelevant, because the way the legislation is written, we have the final say on everything, regardless of what committee you're serving under. So to me, you just leave that in there. I mean, not that we're going to be involved. I mean, the city staff.
I think the thought was that we wouldn't be seeing the applicants, we wouldn't be seeing the names. And,
yeah. And I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is why I was bringing up the,
On the low income.
Yeah,
what did
here's
you say there?
my question earlier.
so under G, so we have two different income guidelines
Yeah.
that, depending on where the applicant falls within those guidelines, it depends on how much
Mm-hmm.
of percentage the city will pay of their project. And under G, it gives preference to the very low income applicants.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of preferential treatment above somebody else who may have applied and got their stuff in before that
Right.
person, just because they have different circumstances if everybody qualifies for the program.
Right. So first come, first serve.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
No
so,
problem.
Can I read these off to Rochelle? I think we're, yeah, so the eligible projects are addressing accessibility needs, brick or masonry repair, door and window repair replacement, electrical repairs, exterior painting, foundation repair and replacement, gutter repair and replacement, hazardous materials abatement, retaining wall repair if hazardous, roof repair replacement, siding if in poor condition, structural repair, and water sewer line repair replacement. Would all sounds like general maintenance stuff, and so on face value, that shouldn't.
We don't even look at
Okay.
retaining walls, gutters.
So this is my concern. We're putting money in here, but it's going to end up
Yeah.
costing them
But,
higher
I
property
mean,
taxes if they
it just
take
kinda
advantage of
depends
this.
Foundation repair, if it's a property that has been deemed unfit because of the foundation and it's repaired and now it's livable, well, that will definitely make a change. So, I mean, it's hard to give an answer, and there's not just a yes or no answer.
At face value, this sounds like it's not going to be shouldn't be a big strike against anybody taking advantage of this, right? Okay.
so a big part of it would be whatever the current condition of the property is,
Yeah,
like how dilapidated it is.
Yeah.
And how, yeah, so.
so yeah, it's hard, I mean, it's hard to say without looking at each individual property, but if it's just, like I said, if you're someone that generally, you know, like a roof, if you're someone when you're getting hail damaged and you need a roof replaced, you replace it, the correct way. We don't look at that at all. I mean, even if you change the type of shingles from, say, asphalt to, a metal, we keep track of all of that information, but that's not what affected your value.
Okay, I guess we're all understood. All right. Any other concerns? You'll bring it back to us? Okay. We move on to item number 7, reports city manager. Ella?
As you notice, there are staff reports in the packet. I've asked for pictures because I think they speak well to progress we're making on things. If there's anything else that you'd like to see in terms of staff reports, you'll see them the first meeting of every month. Please let me know, and I'll try to get that included in the packet for you. I'm big on the pictures, so hopefully you'll see lots of those. Not to diminish what anybody else has done, but I think the museum pictures were really a good capture of what's going on there, and that's what we're trying to accomplish for you, is you don't always get to go out and see it. I've been working with 24/7 on charging stations and some ditch work out there. We've had a little back and forth with Kate on that, or Kenton has, I guess, and Andrew have, and but we're going to go out there and do some ditch cleaning for them, and as soon as the weather improves a little bit. Just been doing typical things, you know, answering questions, reading things, still looking through the budget, getting a little bit better handle every day. But as I wrote to you previously, I'm working really hard to get our previous canine placed Blade. He had some issues with handlers, and I have been spending a lot of time trying to get the dog placed. I had written you an email and said we were gonna put the dog down. Through circumstances that we didn't anticipate, that did not happen over the last weekend, so I began the process of trying to place the dog. Working really hard on that. We have some possibilities in 3 different places, and hopefully we'll get that done. It's a 4-year-old dog. You know, we had between us and Grand Sources, we had a pretty sizable investment in that dog, and I did speak with the mayor, and you know, this is not about a recovery of any funds for us. This is about getting the dog placed rather than putting it down. We do have a new canine on board that's being trained, so we'll have that new pooch here for you to see when it's trained and it's ready to go. With that, I'll be happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions?
I guess my only concern with the canine would be you know, just knowing the history of that particular dog, if it were to be transferred to somewhere else, to make sure that the city would not have any liability going forward for anything that that dog may or may not do.
Yeah, we already have a waiver that somebody would have to sign that indemnifies us from liability in the transfer of the dog. So, I think the important thing is, you know, regardless of what the issue is with the dog, there are, you know, my son was a Marine, and he has a bunch of contacts that he knows that down in Texas and different places. And for example, they haven't said yes, but they do rescues just like this for canines and military dogs that have issues. And there are people who are qualified to handle those dogs, and they do so gladly. So that's what we're trying to find.
What's the progress on the fire department merger?
My understanding is that we, all of the work that was done paperwork wise was misplaced. Something happened to it, so it's all being recreated right now. And I don't have a time frame for you in terms of days or months, but I think we're working hard to get that moving forward at a better pace.
Any questions? All right.
Thanks for the
Thank-
pictures, they were helpful.
Yes, thank you, guys.
All right, we move on to commissioners' reports. Start with JD.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Aaron?
Nothing from me.
All right. JJ?
All is well here.
All is well. Gary?
Is a nice stand, we deserve it. That's all.
Good. All right. Your mayor's report, appreciate the reports from the department heads. Thanks for the good job on the snow removal. You guys did a good job. Looks like the college is making some headway. If you looked at the pictures, those building is very aggressively being cleaned out. So kudos to Ben and all of his staff and the individuals that are involved in the cleaning process. That's been a great move and win-win situation for us. The other thing that I would want to line, I received a call from a gentleman by the name of Chris Riley, who is the governmental director for ADM. And so he advised me that the crushing portion of ADM, who currently employs 31 employees, is going to be shutting down, which will be having an economic impact to us. Salaries and grain purchases to the tune of probably about 3.6 million. So, it's never something that we look forward to, but we're an ag-related community, as I've alluded to in my comments. Will bounce. He said that was just a decision that has been made due to the reduction in productivity, and it's been going for a number of years. So they regret the decision, but the employees have been offered transfers. Some, I believe, will be staying around the area, so we wish them well. And that kind of concludes the mayor's report. If any other business or questions to be addressed, and if not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Department heads? They did it just, you don't need for them to address.
No.
Right?
No.
Yeah, that's why one of the things that we need to understand is the reason that Alan is doing is, well, you might want to explain it that way. We receive the reports electronically, right?
Yeah, we're trying to get the reports in the packet electronically once each month. And then I also forgot to say that the next meeting will be on Tuesday after President's Weekend instead of Monday.
Okay, all conscience clear? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Brombaugh, second. Second by Commissioner Howard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for being here. Meeting adjourned.